If you're serious about launching your first Airbnb and you want a real roadmap, not just fluff, this video is going to walk you through every step week by week. All right, so step number one is going to be getting pre-approved, and this shouldn't take longer than a week. So before you look at any property, I recommend you're actually pre-approved, not just because it can waste time, if you're not approved for the amount you're looking for, but also super importantly, lenders are licensed in different states. And a lot of times when you're working on your first Airbnb deal, I recommend seeking the lowest down payment you can possibly get. Now, on a normal investment property or Airbnb loan, lenders are going to want 20 to 25% down. We can get around this using a vacation home loan for your first or maybe second deal. And those lenders are going to want 10%. We've got special lenders who will go all the way down to 5% down in some markets. But ultimately, getting pre-approved with a lender, taking advantage of the lowest down payment, we're going to need to ask them what markets we can operate in and, what amount we qualify for. That way we can be more intentional within our search. All right, so next is going to be choosing a market. And, this should take another week, two max, ultimately once we're pre-approved. And I recommend having a couple different markets that you're interested in and start scanning for deals in. But, once the financing is lined up, we pick a market. Things that I'm looking for when I'm investing in a new market is regulation-friendly cities. If I can't call the city and clearly understand that they are on board with short-term rentals long-term, I'm not interested in buying there. Number two is going to be high year-round demand. There are always going to be seasonalities in any market, but, for your first deal at least, I would avoid a market that has a huge drop-off in its low season. Number three is going to be undersupplied, and not just with normal listings, but I want undersupplied high quality listings in a market. I'm not scared of competition, but, I would be picking a market that it's not flooded with high quality competition. And something that you can do to test this is you can go to Airbnb.com, plug in the city that you're interested in, and just choose a random weekend a couple months out and see what that competition looks like on the first page. I mean, do you see places that, are just blank living room walls in their main cover photo with limited design and less than 5-star reviews? Or when you go to that first and second and third page, is it flooded with, 5-star review properties that have over 100 reviews, crazy designs, wild amenities, things like that. And then, of course, picking a market that's within the budget of your pre-approval, that's a given. But the truth is, no matter what you're pre-approved for, I would say as long as it's, 200, maybe 225, there are markets out there that can serve you well and provide decent cash flow. And when you're picking a market, you want to pick a place that's going to give you a real good shot at high quality cash flow, as well as long-term upside. Maybe the city's growing or the population's growing or there's jobs coming into the city as well. All right, number three is going to be finding a deal. And, this should take you maybe a week or two, once you've narrowed down a city or two. But, when it comes to finding a deal, I would be going to AirDNA. I'm looking for something called the 20% rule. So when you scroll down and you find those average looking homes and you see, okay, 100 grand is like the peak of what these average ones are doing. Maybe there's 150, 175 on the lake, but those are going to be 10 times the purchase price of the normal homes. Well, if 100 grand is the max revenue on a normal home, divide that by 20% and you're going to get a maximum of a 500K purchase price. All right, that's another filter you can set on Zillow. And then from there, you could set your search. You could reach out to agents and say, hey, I need a property with this specific criteria. And when you do find something that fits that, you can have confidence in making an offer quickly because you did your due diligence on the research. All right, so step four is going to be the inspection and the contingency. And generally, people write these on like a 7-day inspection window. But especially if you're investing remote, I would recommend that you go with a 10 or a 14-day inspection contingency because, ideally in a perfect world, you get the property inspected. And then once we know everything looks good and the deal's got a good chance of going through, you can then fly out to the property still within your contingency period and get eyes on it. And, check out the local area and the neighborhood, obviously walk the home, talk to the neighbors, talk to the Uber drivers when they're taking you to and back from the airport, and just learn what you can about the area and make sure that you resonate with this investment long term. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be your 50, $60, $70, $80,000 that you're putting into the property, and getting eyes on it still while having a chance to back out if you don't like it is going to be important. So as far as the type of inspections go, I'm always getting a normal home inspection, but then on top of that, I'm always going to camera the sewer line and get a good sewer inspection. And then if I've got a pool, I'm going to get a pool inspection too and make sure, the pump and the heater and all the interior pipes of the pool are looking solid. And then what you need to do with this is if you do come across any issues with the inspection, we either need to negotiate and get the seller to fix them or credit them. And if not, worst case scenario, we need to take any extra costs that we found from that inspection and we need to add it into your deal analyzer and recheck the numbers. Make sure with the extra investment going into property to fix these problems, what's your payback period look like and your total cash on cash ROI, and make sure that's still within the goals and parameters that you set. All right, step 5 is going to be design and furniture. And once the inspection contingency is over, you can start to work on this stuff and, really do this, get a head start prior to closing. And I look at design in 2 different stages. Number 1 is I'm okay with hiring a professional designer for your high ROI or really any of your ROI related design items. So what can we pay a professional to do for you? That's for sure going to give you a return on investment for their fee. And this is going to be like your accent walls and your paint colors and your wallpaper and your curtains and your headboard and your throw pillows and your rugs and your couches, everything that they can contribute to the property that will 100% make you more money. I like leaning on a professional designer for. But then the second part of it is going to be all of the non-ROI items, which is going to be, just the rest of the items that your Airbnb needs, but isn't necessarily going to make you more money depending on what you pick. This is going to be like the type of coffee maker you have and your cups and your bowls and your plates and your laundry detergent and the types of towels and the color of your sheets, right? All of that, I've got a standard shopping list. Send me a DM on Instagram. I'll just send you this list so you don't need to pay someone else to do that shopping for you. All right. And I like getting a head start on the design and the furniture while you are still under contract, because this is probably going to be the thing that will have the ability to actually slow down your deal. This designer might be booking, 2 to 3 weeks out, and then it might take them 2 to 3 weeks to put together the design. And then, most of the items, maybe 80% of them will be at your front door in 3 to 4 days, but 20%, we might need a special order, like your bigger furniture. So the sooner the head start we can get on this, the better. But I want to make sure that your deal is going to go through before you spend any money, I guess, especially on that designer fee. All right. Number 6 is going to be the build and the setup. Okay. So this is ultimately, when you start receiving your furniture, how's it all going to be put together? And what I like to do is I like to find someone on TaskRabbit or Thumbtack. Okay. These are going to be sites that you can go to and find an individual who specializes in building furniture. And in a perfect world, I'm going to line up, 3 or 4 of them to arrive the day that most of the furniture or the first day that your furniture is coming in. And ideally, I'd like to be there as well. So if I can fly there and be there for that first day, or maybe you get there on day 1 and then you schedule 3 or 4 TaskRabbit guys to come on day 2, that's going to give you some time to sort through the boxes because you're going to know your design best. So you can sort the boxes in the proper rooms. Those guys show up the second day, you put 1 in each room and just start knocking out the furniture. And, that's going to allow you to oversee the setup and make it more efficient. It's also going to allow you to meet local contractors, right? So if you are doing work to the property, maybe you're painting the walls, you got a credit from the seller to fix your roof and you got to talk to a couple roof guys, or you're doing a backyard overhaul, with some rocks and landscaping. Well, when you can actually meet the local contractors on those first couple days, you're going to get a better price and they're going to take you more seriously. So sort the boxes and then meet with those local contractors and hash out any renovations that you're doing to the property. And then what that'll also allow you to do is, let's say you line up 3 to 4 guys on day 1, or day 2 and 3, you keep them for a couple days until you've got the majority of your furniture done and you've got things that don't need completed anymore. Well, at that point, you could have observed them and see, okay, who's working hard and who's working efficient and who do I like and resonate with? And then that way, when you go back home, you can cherry pick the best handyman or maybe best 2, and those can be the guys that ultimately finish the setup as that remaining 20% of items, get shipped to the front door. And then what a lot of times I will also do is I will take one of those guys and make them my long-term handyman contact as well, because I trust them. I've been around them a few days, and then they're familiar with the house. So, if I have a leak or, one of my outdoor string lights fell, I'm going to call one of those guys because I've got the contact. I trust them. They know the home, and I'll send them over there when a guest is there and, I need some repairs done. All right. The goal here is to make it fast and efficient with your setup, because ultimately the longer the setup takes, the longer it's going to take before you start bringing in revenue and cash flowing. And at this point, you might have already made a mortgage payment, and, we want to get this place live as soon as possible. All right. And then lastly is going to be optimizing the listing. And really, I wouldn't stress too much about this, until you're ready for it. I think all of your focus prior to this should be just asking yourself, hey, what do I got to do to get this place picture ready? And then from the time the photographer goes out and takes the pictures up until when you get the pictures back, maybe 2 days later, everything else can be done. So when it comes to optimizing your listing, we can use AI to take those comparables that we found at the beginning of the process, plug those in, and then ask ChatGPT, say, hey, who are my ideal guests and who's going to pay the most amount of money? And once we determine that, have AI write your listing descriptions and your title and your photo tour, and have it speak directly to your ideal guest avatars. That's how we can identify who will pay the most amount of money to stay at your property. And then this is also the process where we'll use like price labs to set up your dynamic pricing, and Turno to find and manage good cleaners in the market. But again, all of your efforts prior to the photos getting taken, I would want focused on, dealing with contractors and getting all the furniture set up. And this here can honestly be done in a day or two. So if you follow this timeline, you can have purchased and set up a good cash flowing Airbnb in, 90 to 120 days. So I hope you found this video helpful. And if you're looking for someone to help you pick a market, source you a deal, and then walk you through the entire process step by step to make sure you avoid the major mistakes, I'd invite you to book a free deal planning call. I'll put the link in the description below. No pressure, but we'll jump on a Zoom call with you, see if we think we can help you. And then if so, we can share with you exactly how we're helping first-time investors successfully launch their first Airbnb. So if you're interested in that, just click on the link below and go ahead and book that free deal planning call, and we look forward to connecting with you.